So Kyle Kulinski yesterday dropped a pretty bombshell video, and the video is titled Krystal and Saagar's Goodbye Video pulled from the Hill's YouTube channel. It already has almost 224,000 views. I do suspect that this will go over 250,000, maybe even 300. Obviously, Krystal Ball and Saagar Enjeti show called The Rising on the Hill, or it's called Rising on the Hill, was very, very popular, and so a lot of people are tuned in about what's going on and why it is that Krystal and Saagar left, where exactly are they going, all of this kind of stuff. And so he really does drop a big bombshell in here because it gives a lot of details that are basically talking about how the departure of Krystal and Saagar from the Hill was not, like super amicable, and there were a lot of, things that were going on behind the scenes that pushed them away. Now, the Hill is essentially a corporate news outlet. They're owned, I think, by like Trump's friend, I believe it is. So, they're a corporate news outlet with right-wing ownership. And Kyle Kulinski talks about a lot of different stuff in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you what he said in here and give you some of my thoughts about this stuff. So he's really pissed at the Hill because what he sees is what they're doing is really messed up. And basically, one of the things that happened was the Hill allowed Krystal Ball to have the Krystal Kyle and Friends podcast, but then after it saw the success of the first episode that got over 300,000 views, they were apparently threatened with the lawsuit that if they were to post it to YouTube, they would sue Krystal Ball, presumably based on her contract. Now I'm not totally like a legal I don't know all that stuff, but there are non-compete clauses, but I don't know how enforceable non-compete clauses are, and then I don't know how between when you're working for somebody versus after you're. My understanding is after working for somebody, they're pretty rarely enforceable, but still used to pressure employees. But when you're still working, I don't know. I'm not really sure. So they obviously didn't want Krystal to. They were afraid, like, we're losing this person and she's gonna, basically go to her own independent thing. Obviously, corporate media is garbage, and that's the kind of thing that they're gonna do. So that doesn't surprise me even in the slightest. And, it's obviously very douchey. It's even more douchey of them to basically authorize it in the first place and then change their mind after they see the success and they want a piece of it. But it goes to show you that Krystal must have really had this sort of pretty exclusive contract. And also another thing that I do feel like I remember is it seems like Krystal Ball wasn't allowed, this is what a lot of people would say, is that she wasn't allowed to directly endorse any candidates due to her contract. So the contract seemed to have a lot of pretty binding things, which is really interesting because, we're so used to in the lefty media sphere, none of that existing whatsoever, right? Like for Jimmy Dore, it was such a shock that like he was called on by HR, the HR department, and because he was basically like cursing out and just verbally abusing somebody else who worked at TYT. So think about just how different the lefty media sphere is. People don't really have bosses. They just kind of, do their own thing essentially. Even when they do have bosses, they typically can do basically whatever they want. So Krystal Ball had a much more binding contract, is what it appears to be. Krystal Ball also was not allowed to promote the podcast on the Rising show. Not surprising at all that they would do that, obviously. What it appears that Kyle is saying, although I don't know if he's just saying that this may have been a possibility or if he was confirming that this did happen. I think he said that donors to the Hill were calling who were against what Krystal and Saagar were saying, and they were complaining, and then the Hill was pressuring them to stop saying what they were saying because it was going to cost them money. So he's really talking more from his perspective for the most part in the stuff that he's seen, but that does appear to be something that he's at least implying. Another interesting piece that he says, I believe, if I heard it correctly, he says that Krystal and Saagar created Rising. Now, the thing I was surprised about is that Rising was continuing as a show with new hosts. I didn't expect that. I don't know whose IP it is and who owns the rights to that show, or if anybody does. but that probably comes down to the contract themselves. I mean, if Krystal and Saagar came up with the idea, or if Krystal came up with the idea, I don't know. And then if she did she sign away the rights to that idea of the show in a contract with The Hill? Because they have a whole new show. They're not calling it Rising without The Hill. They're calling it Breaking Points, which is a terrible name, by the way. Rising is a lot better. But, I don't know, who has the IP to that? I have no idea. But from what I heard, he's saying Krystal and Saagar actually created Rising. He's also saying that they basically did not give Krystal and Saagar the gracious send-off that they deserved for them boosting The Hill so much, because Krystal and Saagar were highly, highly responsible for the blowing up of The Hill. They've lost 50,000 subscribers in like the past week so far, and I do think that it's going to continue to go down. And so what they did, some of the things they did was they retitled the video, they removed it as a premiere, which it was previously set up to be, and then they were turning on and off the comments. And I do think that they were deleting comments on the Rising videos, probably on the new ones where people may have been like, oh, fuck you for the stuff you do with Krystal and Saagar, or hey, we want Krystal and Saagar. So they were probably deleting those comments as well. That's definitely what I would think. He also says that they ran a new promo for the Rising show, the new Rising show, which is, obviously that's to be expected if they're running a Rising show still. Kyle also says that he's banned from Rising, so he's not allowed to go there. I'm not sure he would want to anyways. And he also hints in the video that Krystal and Saagar had dealt with some other stuff behind the scenes. He seems to be heavily implying that there was some really serious stuff. He keeps saying, like, this is just my experience and my stuff that I went through. Imagine what they went through. And obviously he's got very close direct connects to them. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that he could say that he knows, but he can't for whatever reason it may be. So there's definitely, there's a lot of tumultuous details that are dropped in this bombshell of a video that are surprising, but considering that The Hill is corporate media and you have like a lefty show on there that's supposed to be online, like it's a weird dynamic because you're talking about a YouTube lefty show that's on the channel of a corporate media outlet. So it's like this weird, like, I don't know, it's like eating strawberries on a pizza, basically. It's a weird mix, Doesn't really make sense. He also says that in the beginning, Krystal had to beg The Hill to put the show on YouTube. So, obviously if that's true, then that would give Krystal Ball even more, credit for building their audience, and ergo would, based on the laws of courtesy, require a more gracious send-off, essentially, and better treatment. And that seems to be, definitely one of the big pieces of what Kyle says in this video is that he thinks that The Hill stabbed Krystal and Saagar in the back. They should have gave them a more gracious exit because he believes that they were heavily responsible for their success on YouTube. And that seems to be a really big thing for them. So again, I think most of this stuff really comes down to the simple fact that you have a left-wing show, you have a left-wing YouTube show on a corporate media network, and so you have all the shit that comes with corporate media basically trying to mix with this left-wing show, which is typically, in terms of YouTube, which it's a YouTube show, is structured so differently. It's completely different, right? These people don't have bosses. They basically do whatever they want, whereas at corporate media, you can't do that. And so there was a lot of friction, pretty obvious to me is what it seems like, and that appears to be the main reason why. But yeah, that is the bombshell that Kyle Kulinski dropped. It's pretty crazy stuff.